Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I am audible on your end. Am I? So to those who can hear me, kindly let me know if you can hear me clearly. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Um, okay, I was given the go signal to start because you were having your debate. You just finished your debate session this afternoon. Um, and I welcome you all this afternoon's part one of the Parliamentary Rules and Procedures Seminar Workshop. This is a two-day seminar workshop brought to you by the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics. Okay, for formality's sake, let me introduce myself. I am Mr. Peter Paul Mabitad. I'm alumnus of Holy Cross of Davao College. I just graduated in the previous school year, in particular previous semester. So recently, I was invited to speak before you about parliamentary rules and procedure. Supposedly, there would be two of us. Mr. Duo was also an alumnus of the Holy Cross of Davao College Political Science program. Would be taking over the second part of this seminar workshop, but unfortunately, he can't make it, so I would take over the entire seminar workshop. And I hope that you are all excited and you are looking forward to more learnings that you will gain throughout our 2 days, probably a total of 3 hours, seminar. So I would like to, if possible, if you could turn on your cameras, that would delight me because I would be able to see your beautiful and handsome faces. Aside from that, it's also good to see new faces in the political science family. Lumalaki at lumalago na po ang ating pamilya sa Holy Cross of Davao College. By the time we started, we were last 2018. There were only 20 of us. Luckily, 16 out of those 20 graduated. So it's good to know that I guess you're almost 100, if not 100 students now in total in the political science program. So welcome, and I hope you have a great stay at Holy Cross of Davao College. So without further ado, let's start the first part of the seminar, two-day seminar workshop about parliamentary rules and procedures. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Mhm. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I welcome you to the seminar workshop about parliamentary rules and procedures. So today we will be diving to the preliminaries of parliamentary rules and procedures, as well as the fundamentals of parliamentary procedure. So before anything else, let me share to you a short story pertaining to parliamentary rules and procedure. When I was in elementary, I always hear um whenever we nominate classroom officers, we always hear the words, uh, I second the motion, I nominate um, Mr. Perez, for example, to become our classroom prince. I nominate Miss De La Cruz as our classroom president. These phrases, I hope, I think, and I believe that all of us have heard of this even when we were still young, and we have experiences about election. We have experiences about meetings, and so these words boggled me before because it's pertaining whenever there is a meeting or a nomination. We always hear these words. Then eventually, when I reached college, I attended my very first workshop about parliamentary procedure. And right there and then, I was able to I realized that those words that I've heard before um, really had a set of rules or are vital parts of conducting meetings. Thus, that is what brought us here this afternoon to discuss parliamentary rules and procedures in order for us to have a working knowledge about how to conduct an organized meeting as well as how to preside it, if not be part of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon, let me present to you, apologies, let me present to you everything you need to know about parliamentary rules and procedure. Okay. I think my okay. So before we proceed directly to or deal deeper about parliamentary procedure, I would like you all of you to think about an experience where you presided a meeting or at least you joined a meeting. Imagine a an organization that doesn't follow rules in a meeting. The first thing that would come into our mind would be it will be a chaotic, disorganized, and a never smooth kind of deliberation, which is a problem, which is a dilemma for any organization. Because all of us have experienced joining a meeting, if not presiding it. So, what is parliamentary procedure? For the sake of us having a common understanding of what parliamentary procedure is, it is a body of rules, ethics, and customs observed in meetings or deliberative assemblies that governs the transaction of business in an organization. Ladies and gentlemen, parliamentary procedure is a body of rules. It is a consolidation of specific rules on how we can make a meeting or deliberative assembly as smooth, as organized, and as good as it can get. There is a reason why having rules sets us apart from animals, which are not clinging towards not relying much on their rationality because they don't have rationality to begin with. The reason also why the human species was able to become at the top of the food chain is because we follow rules. We have laws that makes us civilized. And that is one thing that we need to observe in meetings. That is why we have parliamentary procedure so that we can have a civilized meeting. We can have a civilized deliberation of all transactions or matters that we want to discuss pertaining to the affairs of our organization or even small groups. So parliamentary procedure is a set of rules we follow on meetings and deliberative assemblies. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, um, you may ping me anytime. You may disrupt me anytime and raise your questions so that we can attend to it immediately. Or you may reserve also your questions and we will attend to it right after our um, agenda this afternoon. Okay? So that is parliamentary procedure for you. So before we go over parliamentary procedure as a procedure itself, let's take a look back at its history. It started when a certain Henry Martin Robert, who is the author of one of the most authoritative and comprehensive parliamentary procedure to exist. Mr. Henry Martin Robert had an experience where he was invited or asked to preside a meeting. But Mr. Robert didn't have any idea how to do so. He may have joined a meeting, but he don't know how to manage a meeting. So that's the dilemma that Mr. Henry Martin Robert experienced. And then right after he conducted the meeting, he felt embarrassed because he knew that he didn't do well. And then he said, if only I have if only I knew certain rules to follow on how to conduct a meeting, the meeting would be as smooth as it could be. That's the realization of Henry Martin Robert. And from there on, that became his motivation to create the Robert's Rules of Order. And then in few years time after he thought of that, his authored parliamentary procedure is regarded as the most authoritative and comprehensive reference of parliamentary law. Imagine, out of embarrassment, ladies and gentlemen, Sir Henry Martin Robert created a masterpiece that almost everyone, perhaps our lawmaking bodies, big organizations, and even small student organizations are following the rules that he have authored. So that's a good experience. We can turn Mr. Robert's experience is a good example of turning mistakes into opportunities. You know, if you've had embarrassing experiences, perhaps that's a good motivation or inspiration for you to create a book. Imagine, and later on, it might be considered to become a masterpiece. Who knows? So that's a brief history about the beginning of parliamentary rules and procedure. So presented on your screen are among the famous parliamentary authorities in the world. We will not deal deeply on each of these because the purpose of our seminar workshop is uh, to have a working knowledge about the fifth one in your screen, which is the Robust Rules of Order by Mr. Henry Martin Robert. But if you would come across these other parliamentary authorities, it would also be good because you could also use these as references. There is no one parliamentary authority that would really capture the heart of organizations. If there is, then that could be the robust rules of order. But other organizations also practice, for example, the parliamentary rules by Antonio Orindain, which is the parliamentary authority used by the lawmaking body of our Supreme Student Government there at Holy Cross of Davao College, which is the House of Representatives. Okay? If later on you will decide that you will vie for an office in the highest student organization in HEDC, then you would make use of your knowledge about parliamentary procedure if you join the House of Representatives. So again, these are the famous parliamentary authorities, ladies and gentlemen. So at this juncture, let's talk about the basic principles of parliamentary procedure. These are important principles that a student parliamentarian must remember because this answers the question why we should follow parliamentary procedure. So, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you join this seminar, you have at least a desire to become a parliamentarian, or by heart, you are a student parliamentarian. Why? Because this it is not an everyday opportunity where we don't experience this every day, that we will hear um, parliamentary procedure. We may have just um, seen this in on television if we watch Senate hearings. Perhaps we also observed this when we were still young in elementary, where we nominated our classroom officers, among other experiences that we could associate parliamentary procedure. As a student parliamentarian, you must be proud of yourselves because whenever you encounter difficulties in meetings that you may join in the future, at least you could have something to contribute to your colleagues on how you could make your meetings or deliberative assemblies as good as it can get. Okay? So, what are the principles? Parliamentary procedure. First, members have the right to know what the immediately pending question is and to have it restated before a vote is taken. This happens whenever the presiding officer states the motion raised by a member. It is the right of every member to know what the immediately pending question is, or the motion raised, or the transaction being deliberated. I mean, the matter being deliberated, among other information that is vital for the organization. That is the reason why the presiding officer repeats the question or the motion before it is debated, discussed, or even voted upon. Second, all members exercise equal rights, privileges, and obligations. All members in an organization are on equal footing. That is also the reason parliamentary procedure is created in order for all the members to be given an opportunity to take part in the discussion of important matters pertaining to the organization. So, as members, you are given equal rights. You all possess equal rights. Even the presiding officer possesses rights that are equal to the members. But the presiding officer must always be neutral because that is the very reason why um, there should be equality in an organization or deliberative assemblies when we conduct so. And each member have obligations to perform, one of which is to participate in the meetings or deliberative assemblies. Aside from that, they are also obligated to speak about the motions being raised or the matters being discussed in the um, assembly. Third, members must be in quorum to transact business. What do we mean by quorum? It means that the organization should meet the minimum number of required members present before we could officially transact a business. Because if it is less than the required number, then the transactions conducted during that time would be invalid. It would be considered null and void if they have decided um, at that point, even if the quorum wasn't met, because it is imperative that at least majority of the members be present at the meeting in order to officially transact a business. So the general rule constituting a quorum is majority of entire membership that should be present at the meeting. Why majority of the members? Because it is um, in order to know what the rule of majority is, or most of the members is. What if there are 10 members and then only two um, had a meeting and they decided something that would affect the entire membership? Would you agree that only two of the members would decide the fate, or what would happen to the organization? No. At least almost all of the members should be part of it. What we ideally want is all of the members be present at the meeting in order for them to participate in the discussion and decision making. But since this is not always attainable, the parliamentary procedure provides that at least majority of the members be present at the meeting. Next is there is full and free discussion of motion as a basic right. It is a basic right to speak what you think about the motion or the matters being discussed in the organization out of your right of free speech and the right to express. That is what is guaranteed by parliamentary procedure. Next, only one person is allowed to talk at once, and each member is given the opportunity to speak. This is one of the reason why we have a presiding officer that moderates a meeting in order to ensure that all of those who want to speak will be given an opportunity to speak, no matter how negative or positive the um the something that someone wants to talk about. So long as it is valid, then you are free to do so. Next, no person can speak unless recognized by the presiding officer. So in order for one to be given an opportunity to speak, that person must first get the recognition of the presiding officer. How can this be done? For example, you want to um, say your affirmation to the motion being raised. You can't just speak immediately what's in your mind, but rather you would either raise your hand or call the attention of the presiding officer. You may say, Madam Chair, and then the presiding officer, once he or she recognizes you, that will be the time for you to speak. And then you would speak whatever it is that you want to say. Next, personal remarks or attacks are out of order. This is discouraged in any parliamentary procedure. You may have seen in some videos where things are getting personal between two lawmakers. For example, the classic um, personal remarks of the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago and the never uh, dying former Senator Juan Ponce Enrile. Um, the late Senator Santiago gave a remark to Juan Ponce Enrile being a womanizer. That's almost out of order. That is one of the reason also why parliamentary procedure discourages this, because the very purpose of parliamentary procedure is to avoid chaos and disorganization in a meeting. So as much as possible, these are ruled out of order. The late senator could have been um, placed in contempt because of her personal remarks to the late inappropriate remarks to the former Senator Juan Ponce Enrile. But it also depends on the decision of the presiding officer. Okay? But again, when we conduct our meetings uh, during our meetings or general assemblies in people, let us always um, not give personal remarks, especially if its purpose is to attack our colleague. We can always discuss things civilly. And as student parliamentarians and as students of political science, we must always act um, in a civilized manner. Okay. Next, majority rule is observed in deciding questions except when members' rights are involved, which requires a two-thirds majority vote. Whenever we decide on something, the majority rule always applies. However, in instances where the rights of a member or all the members are involved, at least two-thirds is required. Why is this so? Because if you will decide on changing a rule that would affect the rights of the members, you don't want only half plus one who decide to it. You would want almost all of the members to agree to it. That is why at least two-thirds of the entire membership present at the meeting should decide whether to approve or not a decision that affects the rights of the members. But in all other decisions that the organization wants to make, majority rule is the general rule to be observed. Unless if it is provided in the constitution and bylaws or other rules that the organization is following. Next, silence or the act of abstaining is a consent which gives the advantage for those who vote to decide a question. There is nothing wrong with keeping silent throughout the meeting or a deliberative assembly. But it is also very important that we participate because whatever is decided in the meeting might affect us as a member of that organization. If you don't really have something to say or you can't decide on a matter at hand, well, it might be understandable that you would be silent. But if you have something to say or at least give to influence the decision of the entire organization on a particular question, then we should at least try. Okay? Next, the presiding officer must always be impartial. Just imagine the judge in a court is has reservations or is clinging towards one party. You would always expect that the judge would always do things that would be favorable to that party which he or she is um, clinging to. That is why, as a presiding officer, we should always stick to the principle of impartiality because we are trying to make the assembly organized. That is the main purpose of a presiding officer. And as well, to ensure fairness, equality, and equal treatment of all members. So if you'll be given an opportunity to preside a meeting, then as a presiding officer, you must be fair and impartial. So what is a deliberative assembly? It is a gathering of a group of people upon which parliamentary rules and procedures are applied. So you might have joined, or at least you know about these assemblies. First, we have mass gathering, we have local assembly of organized society, a convention, the board could be in companies, we could be in a board of um, the provincial level, in the local level, or even in the national level. We also have legislative body. Okay, so we'll not dig deeper on this kind of assemblies, because let's just at least limit this to our organization at this moment. And later on, if you have a working knowledge about parliamentary procedure and you're confident about it, then you could apply it into the following assemblies on your screens. Perhaps later on, one of you would become an honorable senator or a congressman. So at least you have a working knowledge about parliamentary procedure. Next, what are the rules governing a deliberative assembly? First, the um, corporate charter or articles of incorporation. We have the constitution and bylaws, rules of order, and standing rules. So when we conduct meetings, for example, in an organization, we can't just say, let's follow this Robert's Rules of Order. Other members might not be familiar about it, but you can always incorporate it into your existing charter. You might also put it in your constitution and bylaws. The 2021 Constitution of and bylaws of the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics um, specified or stipulated in one of its provisions. I forgot what article and section that is, but it specifically highlighted that the parliamentary authority to be adopted by the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics will be the Roberts Rules of Order. You can also adapt other rules of order so long as it will be decided and agreed upon by all the members, and even standing rules. Okay, so we discussed earlier about the preliminary things that we need to know about parliamentary rules and procedure. At this juncture, let's talk about the fundamentals of parliamentary rules and procedure. Quorum. This refers to the required number of members of an organization that must be present in order to legally transact business. We discussed this earlier. At least the general rule is majority of the entire membership, which is half plus one. If you have 100 members in total in an organization, at least 51 of those members must be present in a meeting. Well, that includes the presiding officer, the secretary, so on and so forth. But this could also change if you would really specify it in your existing rules. You could incorporate it in your constitution and bylaws to specify how many numbers do we need in order for us to consider that a meeting is in quorum. If you have 100, if all the members agree that at least 75 of the entire membership must be present, then it can be done. Next, majority of entire membership. Again, this is what we discussed earlier, that it should be majority of the entire membership that must be present in a meeting. So in the absence of a quorum, for example, the first regular session of the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics, out of 100 members, only 49 have attended. So what are our remedies? Or at least, what are the things that we can do to increase our chances of making our meeting legal? First is to fix the time to which to adjourn. For example, there is no possibility that we will really reach the majority of members to be present at the meeting. Then we could decide to fix the time to which to adjourn. Fix the time of adjournment. Fix the time to which to adjourn is a different kind of motion. It is a privilege motion. It also has a different definition. Okay, but again, we can fix the time of adjournment, or we can move to have a recess. By this, we could expect that at least we could buy time for all those members that are not yet present to have ample time to come, and hope that we can reach the majority of the, or at least the quorum, to transact the business. So what can we do during recess? Perhaps we can do is call all the members who are not yet at the venue. We could send them message, encourage them to come, or at least ask them to send proxies. Proxies meaning um, they will send other people to represent them in a meeting. Okay, just for us to at least reach the quorum. But if all these remedies are proved to be ineffective, then there is no other choice but to adjourn the meeting, because it would be a waste of time waiting for other members, which we don't know if they would really come, just to reach the quorum. Then it would be much reasonable to just adjourn the meeting and reschedule the meeting in a much later time. So what are at least the minimum officers that must be present in a deliberative assembly? We should have at least a presiding officer who would moderate the meeting, a majority block leader. This is optional because not all organizations are practicing having a majority floor leader or a minority floor leader compared to our Senate. And but it is very important to have a secretary who will write the minutes of the meeting, who will check the attendance, among other tasks that are important, that cannot be performed by other members and even the presiding officers all at once. At least there is a secretary who would jot down notes, take important points, and safekeep all the documents that are important for the organization. So if you there would come a time that you will be given an opportunity to preside a meeting. You must follow these 10 important rules as a presiding officer. First is that the presiding officer must be impartial. We talked about this earlier. This is to ensure fairness for all members. Second, presiding officer shall use the third persona when speaking. Never use the pronoun I. That's why if you're the presiding officer, you would say, for example, you say a ruling, the presiding officer rules that this motion, so on and so forth. And even the members could not use the pronoun I. They would always They should always be in a third person persona. Next, the chair must remind the members to confine to the merits of the motion. This is also the reason why there is a presiding officer in order for the business at hand to be contained, or the discussions of the members to be contained only to the merits of the motion, to the business that is being discussed at the moment. Fourth, the presiding officer shall not call individual members by names or use the pronoun you. Again, in third person persona. If the presiding officer would use the third person persona to himself, on himself or herself, he or she should also apply it in addressing other members. Well, how do we do this? For example, you could say the presiding officer, for example, a member raises his hand waiting to be recognized. Madam Chair, I would have something I would like to say something. And then the presiding officer would recognize the person raising his hand. For example, the presiding officer would say, the presiding officer recognizes the boy wearing red t-shirt. You could use characterizations or what other identifiers you could use to directly describe the person you want to recognize, or at least the person you want to call the attention of. But the main rule is don't use first person and second person persona. Okay? Always remember that should always use the third person persona. Fifth, vote only to break a tie. May vote in any vote by ballot. Why is it necessary that the presiding officer should only vote when there is an instance of a tie? Is because the presiding officer should not have reservations on motions. Okay? The presiding officer should not vote to begin with unless if it is a vote by ballot, because the members cannot see the vote of the presiding officer. So it ensures um, anonymity. Okay? Because the problem here is if the presiding officer participates in voting, then the members would feel that the presiding officer is becoming favorable to those people who voted, who have the same vote as him or her. That's the problem there. That is why, again, going back to number one, the presiding officer must ensure impartiality or neutrality. But in the instance where there is a tie, the only way to break it is to allow the presiding officer to vote on that motion. Six, determine the quorum before transacting a business. So the presiding officer, in the beginning of the session, for example, would say, the first regular session of the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics has now come to order. The presiding officer calls the secretary to do a roll call. Okay, then doing the roll call, the secretary would call all the members to check their attendance, and then the secretary would report before the presiding officer the result of the roll call. For example, there are 51 present. The secretary would tell the presiding officer, Mr. Chair, there are 51 present, 14 and 49 absent. Then the presiding officer would restate the result of the attendance or the roll call, and then make a decision. So the presiding officer's ruling is imperative to know if the organization has reached the required number of members present in a meeting or quorum to legally transact a business. The presiding officer would say there are 51 present and 49 absent. This constitutes the presence of quorum. Therefore, the first regular session of the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics is perhaps valid. We say that. So what would happen if the presiding officer will not state that the quorum is met? The members would can object, of course, because out of the result of the attendance or the roll call, it is what the presiding officer has stated is inconsistent with the result of the roll call. So could say that you could always object the ruling of the presiding officer. Seventh, introduce the business in proper order and recognize the speakers. This is the reason why the presiding officer would always repeat the question or repeat the motion after it is being raised. I'm sorry, it is introducing the business. Introducing the business meaning the presiding officer introduces what are the matters to be discussed at the moment. Can be done through the secretary, and then excuse me, the presiding officer would must know about who are those people speaking about the agenda that will be taken up throughout the session. 8. Employ unanimous consent when appropriate. Ninth, maintain order and determine if a motion is in order. And lastly, put motions to a vote and announce the results. So if you want to be an effective presiding officer and ensure that a meeting will come down smoothly, you must remember these 10 rules. Next, what are the rules that members must follow? Since there is only one presiding officer, could be multiple secretaries, one majority floor leader, or one minority floor leader. But there would always be a lot of members. So what are the members' rules to follow? First is to address the presiding officer by his title. That is why you don't um, use the first person or second person persona. Would always use the third person persona through these examples. Could address the presiding officer as Mr. Chair, Mr. President, Mr. House Speaker, Miss Chair, Madam President, Madam House Speaker, or any other um, characterizations that you could think of that would directly describe the presiding officer, but it must be in a very respectful manner. Okay. So second, always speak in third person. Again, we have discussed this earlier. Third, members shall address other members through the presiding officer. The reason being why we should always address whatever we want to say to the presiding officer, even if it's even if you want to direct it to another member, is because whatever you say might affect the entire membership. So through the presiding officer, you are speaking for all the members or to all the members. That is one of the reasons why the members should always address other members through the presiding officer. Or whatever they want to say, it must be addressed through the presiding officer. Fourth, do not use the name of any members. Instead, use descriptive names. So if you don't want to directly call the name of the person or the member, instead you use descriptive names. For example, you want to speak. to one person, but again, you can't directly say it to a person, but you need to address it through the presiding officer. Okay, you could say, Madam Presiding Officer, I would like to call the attention of the person wearing a blue jacket. If he or she could, if he could um turn off the air conditioner because the temperature in this meeting hall is giving us a chill in the bones. So that's an example. That's an example. Again, you don't use direct names. You don't address people by names during a meeting. You can use descriptive names because we want to become um, respectful in a manner. Okay. Fifth, never speak while in seat. If you are given the opportunity to speak on a certain matter or on a motion, or you want to say something about the motion, then and then you are given the opportunity to do so, you should always stand up and then speak what it is that's in your mind. Sorry. Six, obtain the floor by raising the right hand. If this is not possible, for example, in a virtual meeting, you could either use an icon on your, we have here in the Google Meet, we have a raise button icon, but you could also call the presiding officer, especially if you don't have a camera to use. Seventh, address the chair and wait to be recognized. Again, you cannot obtain the floor unless you are recognized by the presiding officer. So what is the order of business that must be observed in a meeting? Order of business pertains to the arrangement of matters to be undertaken in a meeting or deliberative assembly. First, we have the reading and the approval of the minutes of the meeting. If you're familiar with the minutes of the meeting, you know that it contains all the very important informations that have transpired in a meeting. And it is very important to keep documents about a meeting in order for us to have a reference if later on we will be needing it. Second, the reports of officers, board, and standing committees if they have something to discuss before the body. After the reading of the and approval of the minutes of the meeting, then we could proceed with giving opportunities for committees who were given a task to speak before the assembly. Third, reports of special committees, select or ad hoc. Um, the this portion of the order of business pertains to committees that are created for a specified purpose and a certain duration. It is different from standing committees because standing committees are committees that already exist as soon as the organization is created. So these committees are um, important in an organization that it should always exist. But special committees or ad hoc committees are created only for a certain purpose. Next, we have special orders, unfinished business and general orders, and new business. So when we conduct a meeting or an assembly, we should always observe this following order of business. Orders of the day, on the other hand, refers to the item of business is scheduled to be discussed in a given session. So you might ask, what is the difference between orders of business and orders of the day? Order of business, again, refers to the arrangement of matters to be undertaken in a deliberative assembly. This means that this already exists. These are necessary. However, after the reading of the approval of the minutes of meeting, after the board, standing committees, and officers have given the report, after special committees have already given the report, after the organization have taken care of these special orders, after um, the members have taken care of the unfinished business, then at this point we could cater new businesses. That is where we could insert the orders of the day. It pertains to certain matters that we need to discuss. For example, team building activity of an organization, um, the making of a and reproduction of organizational uniform. So this can change. Orders of the day changes. It differs in every meeting. But the order of business, this is the order that must be followed at all times. Order of business, orders of the day is part of the order of business so that it answers the confusion that we have. How to bring business before the assembly could be through a formal resolution, a written resolution, or a motion. A motion is a formal proposal that the assembly take action. A motion is raised during the meeting. For example, you want to raise a motion for the organization to conduct a team building activity. How can this be done? For example, you want to say it in this manner. Madam Chair, the humble representation would like to propose that people conduct a team building activity on September 21, 2022 at the moot court. That is a motion. It can be raised during the meeting or assembly. A resolution, on the other hand, is a is in the formal writing. It's a formal is a motion in a written form. You must have seen this because I believe that most of you are part of a committee in the organization. So it is imperative that you must be knowledgeable about how to write a resolution because it is one way that we can raise a motion before the assembly. A resolution contains um, whereas clauses as well as I forgot what you call that part where it states um, the specific content of the resolution. But again, it is in the form of writing. It is still a motion. It raises a business before the assembly to be discussed and to be decided upon. Okay, how to handle a motion? If there is a motion being raised, how do we take care of it? First, we need to obtain the floor. If we have a motion in mind, we need to obtain the floor in order for us to um, raise the motion that we want to raise. Again, we must first get the recognition of the chair to be able to speak. Okay. After obtaining the floor, we raise the motion. For example, we want to raise a motion that the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics conduct a team building activity. After raising the motion, the presiding officer would ask the members or would first repeat the question. There is a motion to that the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics conduct a team building activity on September 21, 2022 at the moot court. Then the presiding officer would ask the members or the body, is there any second to the motion? And then any member um, in synchrony or individually may say second the motion. A second to the motion is very important because it means that the members wants to consider discussing that question or that motion. After the second is obtained, the chair states the motion again. Okay, the presiding officer would say, "Okay, it has been the motion has been properly moved and seconded." Then the body would then proceed to discussion of the question. So how can this be done? The presiding officer may say, calling the proponent to discuss the motion. Then the person who raised the motion will be given the floor to discuss the merits of that motion. Why is it important? What are its benefits? And it is as the proponent of that motion, he or she must speak good things about that motion. It's like marketing that motion to be adopted. And then after the proponent have given his take on why he or she raised the motion, then the presiding officer would say, is there any further discussion? Which means that it opens the floor for debate. Once the floor is open for debate, all other members may say things for or against the motion. Why they agree with the motion to be passed, and why they don't want the motion to be passed. Again, it must be um, stated in the most respectful manner, and it must be in a reasonable manner. If you disagree with the motion raised by a co-member, then you could just say your state your reasons during the debate. And once there are no other discussions or no other members want to talk about the motion, then the presiding officer would say, I would still ask first, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, are you ready for the question? And the members would say yes in synchrony or individually. Why is it important that the presiding officer asks this question, this sentence, are you ready for the question? The reason being is that this is to ready the members that they would be voting for the question. Okay. So after stating this, and then the members have said yes, then the presiding officer would repeat the question. The question is, the presiding officer would say this. For example, the question is whether or not to approve the proposal that the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics conduct its team building on September 21, 2022 at the Moot Court. For those who are in favor, kindly raise your right hand or kindly say aye or yes, or you may type in your votes depending on the situation. This is depending on the situation. And then after all the members who are in the affirmative side have given their vote, then the presiding officer would proceed to asking the members of those on the negative. Okay? Then the presiding officer would say, for example, to those who are against the motion, kindly raise your right hand, say aye, say yes, or type in your um, vote. So after the voting, the secretary would give the result to the presiding officer. How can this be done? The presiding officer may say, the presiding officer would say to ask the secretary this manner. Madam Secretary, kindly announce the votes. And then the secretary would respond to the presiding officer in this manner. Madam Chair, there has been 59 for the affirmative, 48 for the negative, and 1 for abstain. That's a total of 100 votes, right? Okay, if that happens, the presiding officer would then decide on the question and announce its effect. But first, the presiding officer would um, repeat the result. The presiding officer would say there has been 51 in the affirmative, 48 on the negative, and 1 for abstain. The affirmative has it. Therefore, the proposed team building activity of the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics on September 21, 2022 at the moot court is hereby adopted. Adopted, rather. So, that is um, point number 9, which is the announcement of the effect of the result of the motion being voted. Okay. It is very important that the presiding officer announces the effect of the vote in order to recognize that that is the result that is the result of the voting that's being conducted. Because if the presiding officer fails to announce the result, I mean, fails to announce the effect of the result of the voting, then there will become a dilemma because you don't know if the vote is adopted, is denied, or whatever um, effect it has with the motion. So, as a presiding officer and as members, we need to remember these 9 steps in handling a motion. Okay. At this juncture, let's proceed in differentiating what is a meeting, a session, an adjournment, and a recess is. A meeting is a single official gathering of members where they transact important business for an organization for a certain period of time. A meeting, for example, is a meeting you conduct to plan out the the upcoming political science week that we are conducting now. You conduct it in perhaps 2 hours duration. So that's one session. Okay, one session of a meeting. A session, on the other hand, is a series of meetings that can be scheduled regularly. For example, the Parliamentary League of Students in Politics would conduct series of sessions throughout the semester every first Monday of the month. That's an example of a session because it is a series of meetings. Okay. The difference between a session and a meeting here, we could see that it is the number of meetings being conducted. If it is more than one meeting that is related to one another, we can say that it is a session. If it is a gathering where we discuss important business for the organization for just a certain period of time, we could say that it is a regular meeting, a special meeting sometimes, whatever we call this, so long as it is only for a very specific time, it is called a meeting. A recess is a short intermission or break of the meeting session. So we raise a recess whenever we want to take a break for whatever reason. For example, the organization wants to have, this is not the typical recess that we have way back in um, elementary where we take snacks. But it could be a reason for us to take a recess. But in an assembly or in a deliberative assembly, we use recess, for example, to allow the members to breathe. If the meeting has been very intense, we could raise a motion to recess. If we want other members to be able to come in the meeting if we weren't able to achieve the quorum, among other reasons. Next, adjournment refers to the termination or ending of a meeting or a session at that moment. We raise the motion to adjourn a meeting if we have successfully transacted all the business that we want to transact throughout the meeting. An adjournment sine die is an adjournment without a day or adjourn an assembly for an indefinite period. The difference with it, the difference of it with adjournment itself is that there is no definite time on um, where we end the meeting. This exists in this exists or being practiced in Senate sessions where they um, where lawmakers take long vacations during summer, for instance, but this does not end the session that they are having. Okay, so that concludes the first part of our parliamentary rules and procedure seminar workshop. I hope that you gained a lot of knowledge, and I hope that you are more excited about what else we can learn about parliamentary rules and procedures. So on the second part of our seminar workshop, which will be tomorrow, same time, but this will be in a face-to-face manner, we will be discussing about the kinds of motions. We will know what a main motion is, what um, a privilege motion is, what a subsidiary motion is, and what is the order of precedence of these motions. Aside from that, we would also be able to know the rules on debate. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen, to know because as students of political science and as student parliamentarians, we must conform to certain rules in order for us to become more civilized in our conduct. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions you want to ask, you may raise it at this moment. If you don't have any questions, you may reserve it tomorrow. If you don't have any questions at the moment, or you just want to review this session we had this afternoon, and later on you would think about a question that would pop in your mind. So perhaps we can um, deal with it tomorrow in our second part. Aside from the second part of our discussion, I would also allow you to experience um, having a simulated session. We will have a simulated session tomorrow because aside from the seminar or the discussion of parliamentary rules and procedure, we would also be able to experience itself because parliamentary procedure is best learned when we practice it. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my experiences also with parliamentary procedure is that just having a working knowledge about this will not suffice. We need to do this in order for us to really appreciate the importance of parliamentary procedure. So that concludes my discussion. If you have questions, you may raise it at this moment. If you have none, um, I will be seeing you tomorrow. Um, who among the officers is present at this afternoon at in this meet so that we could ask for additional details? I think there is none. Sorry, sorry. Okay. Since since there are no questions at the moment, I hope that you have questions tomorrow so that we could really clear the confusions you have throughout our first day of discussion. Nevertheless, we will have an ample time tomorrow because we would really be spending more time to deepen our understanding about parliamentary procedure. So I will not be holding you much longer this afternoon. Again, please send my regards to your moderator, Mr. Julio Cesar Deloy, and to your Prime Minister, Mr. Francis Joseph Pagulayan. Thank you again for the opportunity of speaking uh, about parliamentary rules and procedure. If you have other important announcements pertaining to our second
Ikaw
part,
ka, dili ka.
okay. Anyway, so tomorrow, would like to clarify, our second part will be at 3:30 again, the afternoon. But good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you again for inviting me.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mabitad.
Thank you,
It's
thank you.
been a long time po.
Yeah, and I will be seeing you perhaps tomorrow,
Yes
right? Okay.
po.
Okay, what would be the would you would like to ask? Um, it would be the same time tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. or okay, 3:30 p.m.
Yes po.
So tomorrow will be the second part of the seminar workshop, which we will be discussing the kinds of motion, the rules on debate, as well as we will conduct a short workshop where we would practice parliamentary procedure.
Hmm.
So I guess that's it this afternoon. So well, thank you again for those who joined me this afternoon in this short discussion, and I believe that this will be posted um, on your page so that those who weren't able to attend this afternoon session could still see the uh, the discussion we had. Okay, so I will be seeing you tomorrow, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity, and um, keep safe. Goodbye. PM.
Prime,
Ah,
ay,
yes, yes,
Kuya
yes,
Peter,
yes.
may we have a photo opportunity?
Ah, yeah, sure.
Muna, sure.
Kailangan i-ano,
For a while.
yan.
Okay.
Kailangan kailangan mo mag-stop ng share.
Okay. 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 Say, please open your camera, everyone.
Yeah, you. Those who can open their cameras, please open your cameras so that we can really see.
Okay. Okay. I will start now. 1, 2, 3, smile. Another one. 1, 2, 3. That's all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kuya Peter.
Thank you, and see you tomorrow, sir. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.